Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Sandeman Street Podcast, a podcast about Dundee and Dundee United from fans of both clubs. Second week in a row for Jack, my new co-host. Jack, how are we doing this week?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. We've obviously not scared you off. I say we've,
Nope.
It's only me. I've obviously not scared you off, so back for the second week, episode 7. We're cooking with gas. We're back into the league season now. Unfortunately, that's only lasted 2 weeks and then we're back off for the Cup, but we've got plenty to talk about this week. So, what we'll do is we'll start off with United, considering United played yesterday. Last week, when we spoke about in the lead up to these weekend's fixtures, you suggested the Hearts were going to score 3 goals at Tannadice. Well, they did score 3 goals, so you were right, but they didn't give United the tanking that you were predicting. It finished 3-2 to Hearts. I think it was a late goal from Stuart Finlay. I don't know if you were at the game or did you see the highlights. I've seen a wee bit of it myself, and then obviously I watched it on Sports Scene. United were getting a lot of assistance from Xander Clark, from what I've seen, but from considering they were in Europe in the midweek, they played away alright, didn't they?
Yeah, I seen the highlights of it, and I thought we're probably set up on the counter attack. I seen the possession stats, and I think Hearts dominated the possession. But I think we were able to give them a decent game, considering the boys were probably knackered. Xander Clark wasn't probably at fault for both our goals, to be fair, but I think Dolchik still done well with both of his goals. And I was right about the 3 goals getting conceded. It was a bit concerning though with Juvu, the centre half. I think he was at fault for all 3 of the goals. So I think he gave away the penalty, and then he lost his marker twice in the box for both the other goals. So I think that's something that can be improved upon, but I think we did put in a decent performance, all things considering.
Well, certainly the first goal, the penalty that Hearts got, as you say, the boy, he didn't do too well. He got far too tight to his marker, and rather than giving him even half a yard, the boy has his back to goal. I get that he's very close in, but he got far too tight, and the boy just used that to win himself the foul, and it is a definite penalty. Shanklin scores the penalty. You know what I thought though? It's very unlike Jim Goodwin's teams. Like, you've had the first couple of games in Europe. I'm not even going to consider them, because you're playing against a team who everybody expected you to beat. That brings its own pressure. You did what you needed to do in the 2 games. It wasn't prey, but you did what you needed to do. Really, what I would base United on now is their league games and their game last week. They did very, very well last week. Very well. Going away from home to a team like Rapid Vienna, who must have far more money to spend than United, and getting a 2-2 draw, very, very well done. But the first 2 league games of the season, it's very unlike Jim Goodwin, isn't it? Like, Jim Goodwin's teams, especially last season, hard to beat. Nick a goal, win 1-0. It doesn't seem to be like that so far, but obviously we're early days, but it doesn't seem like that so far, does it?
No, I think he's trying. I think he said at the start of the season that he was going to try and play a higher line this year, and so he's brought in boys that he think can do the running. I think he's trying to play a higher press, squeeze the space a bit, whereas previously he'd sit back and soak up the pressure and then try and hit on the counter attack. And I think that's opening us up at the back a bit more than what would have happened last season or the previous seasons, and so we are getting hit on the break. We're maybe not as defensively secure as we should be, but it's still the start of the season, and if he's able to coach the players the right way, I think it could work, but it's just a matter of waiting and seeing, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I really want to say this as taking a pinch of salt, because it's so early in the season that United have got a completely new team, so it's going to take a wee bit of time for all these players to get used to each other. So I really don't want it to come across like I'm really sitting hammering on United and other faults 2 league games into the season, but it is a wee bit worrying that they're conceded effectively 3 goals from set pieces yesterday. They conceded the penalty from either a cross into the box or from a set piece and in the second phase, and obviously the 2 headers from corners in the second half. Jim Goodwin, as I say, it doesn't seem like it's his type of team. If he's saying what you're saying, then he's maybe trying to evolve. Like, he's came up last season as a newly promoted team, and his first thought is, look, let's just be hard to beat and keep yourself in the league. And obviously they've well surpassed that expectation. And maybe he's now thinking, right, we've got a bit more money from where we finished last season, we've got European football, we'll try and evolve. So yeah, it could just be a case of it'll take a wee while longer to bed in those principles and whatnot. But it is quite concerning that this effectively conceded 3 goals from crossing into the box yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, especially considering 2 of our centre-backs are 6'5", and I think they were definitely the tallest players on the pitch. So it is concerning. Like I say, Juve lost his marker twice, lost Stuart Findlay twice. He's probably not switched on enough, he's probably tired, and it was late in the game. I think, well, the winner was late in the game anyway, so that is concerning. And it's also concerning, I think, that the other goals we've conceded this season have all been the same type of play. They've all been behind our wing backs and along the byline, and then the ball's been cut back and it's been scored. And I think that was the case with Falkirk, both their goals, and then against Rapid Vienna as well. I think both their goals were like that as well. So it seems to be the same type of mistakes we're making, the same tactical errors probably. So it is something that definitely needs to be worked on. Maybe bringing in a set piece coach. I don't know if I've got one, but something does need to be worked on because it's clearly not working the way it should be.
No, I think goals like that, especially like the first goal against Rapid Vienna, where it was like from the right hand side, it was like a low cross across the face, and whoever big number 4, he's playing right side of the centre halves. I think it's the boy that you were speaking about earlier. Loses his man completely, and I think things like that are a lot down to communication. And you've got him. Where's he from?
He's Moldovan.
Yeah, and you've got the boy Esselink, who I would assume is Dutch. A Moldovan and a Dutchman playing in centre half. I mean, I don't know what their English is like. I would assume that they'll speak basic English. But all these sort of things could come into consideration, especially when it's simple like goals like that I can see boys no picking up their man. That's basics, and you would think that Jim Goodwin will iron that out. Jim Goodwin's a good manager, he'll iron that sort of stuff out. So a wee bit of concern in that regard. I think from what I've heard from other people and from the media and whatever, by the time that Hearts got their winner, it was like United were just kind of holding on for the draw. They were out on their feet. I think they've obviously got the European game, quite a lot of injuries and suspensions as well, haven't they?
Yeah, they do. I mean, I was surprised we never played more of the youngsters, to be honest with you. I think a lot of the first teamers could have done with maybe a bit more of a rest, because coming up against Hearts is never an easy task. And with this Rapid Vienna game coming up, it's probably the biggest game of the season, and it probably will be the biggest game of the season. So it's something we should really prioritise, I would say, purely for prize money. So I'm surprised we never played more of our youngsters, and I think that's maybe not so much why we lost, but it definitely wasn't a helping factor in the result.
What do you make of Hearts? Do you think that they'll have a good season? Obviously, they've started well, 2 wins from 2. Top of the league, I think, at the moment. Derek McInnes is a good manager. Do you reckon that they'll have a good season? And obviously, they've not got any European football. And you consider that Aberdeen have started with 2 defeats on the bounce. They've obviously had a hard start. One of them was against Hearts away from home, and then Celtic. They've got guaranteed European football. Hibs are right in with a good chance of being a game or a tie away from having guaranteed European football. You guys have put yourselves into an okay position. So it's looking like Hearts for third, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think the playing less games is definitely going to help them. Derek McInnes is a good manager as well, so I think they'll definitely be competing for third. They could compete for second. Rangers haven't had the best starts, so they could easily compete for second, the way things are going. So yeah, I like Hearts. I think they probably didn't create many clear-cut chances yesterday, but I do think they're a strong team this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, as you say, and as what I've mentioned earlier, the fact that up until at least Christmas they've not got 2 games in a week, like Aberdeen and potentially others will have, is going to be a huge benefit to them. I don't think any of the teams outside the Old Firm can really handle the European games through into the group phase. But we'll soon see if that is still the case this season with Aberdeen, and then hopefully more teams getting through to the league phase. It'll be good for the league and good for the coefficients, if nothing else. One last thing I wanted to mention about the game yesterday was Lawrence Shankland at the end wasn't exactly endearing himself to his former fans, was he? I don't know if you noticed it when they scored their winner.
All I've seen was a photo of him like screaming or shouting. I don't know if it was a United player or what, but I'm guessing he celebrated a bit too much.
Yeah, if you go back and watch it again, he's kind of grappling with his marker at the back post when Hearts scored their third. And when the ball hits the net, he doesn't really push the boy away, ushers the boy to the side more than anything else, and he just starts screaming in his face and laughing. And that's obviously right. It was right on the byline, basically behind the net. And I could just imagine the United supporters at that area of the ground noticing that and not being chuffed, especially when you've just conceded a stoppage time winner. So, no very great for Shankland. I mean, we're all of the shithousery is what people say, but I'm no a big fan of that.
No, I mean, if I was a player playing that game and my team had just won a winner, like scored the winner, I'd be happy as well. And maybe the United player's been chatting to him all game, so I think it happens in most games of football, and it would happen in most games of football. So.
The thing is you've just scored an injury time winner. Go away and celebrate with your teammates. Your teammates just ran away celebrating with the vast majority of the rest of the 11. Go away and celebrate with them, or go and run over to your fans. Why are you doing that? Anyway, that's my moan about that, because I'm not Shankland's biggest fan. We'll move on to Dundee side of things. Saturday evening game live on Premier Sports at Ibrox. Now, last week, after the Hibs defeat, I was saying that it was one of the most uninspiring games of football I've ever been to and ever thought of Dundee. Well, I'll tell you something, that is taking a complete 180-degree turn, because that was massively inspiring. Have you seen the highlights?
Yeah, I watched the highlights, yeah.
Right, let's get right to it. Is it a penalty?
Right. I think, if I'm a Rangers fan, I'm yelling for it. I think the boys probably... Well, he sold it. He's definitely sold it. I think he's grabbed onto... I don't know who it was, right, maybe?
Yeah, was it right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he's grabbed onto Dreyrek's shirt. He's stopped his run. He stopped his own momentum when Dreyrek's been following him. And Dreyrek's not had a chance to stop. And I think there is maybe a slight contact. But he's definitely sold it. If I'm a Rangers fan or a fan of any other team and that happens, I'm shouting for it. And I think they've maybe looked at VAR afterwards, and I don't think they've seen enough to turn it over. So I think it maybe is a penalty, as much as I know most people are saying it isn't. But it is a soft penalty, in my opinion.
So there's a couple of things that I'd like to say about it. So the first one is that, shock horror, I don't think it's a penalty. The reason I don't think it's a penalty is because, as you're really kind of saying, he's played for it. I honestly think, right, that referees, not just in Scotland, in the whole of world football, need to be taught body language, need to be taught physics, right? Because the way that he has fallen to the ground is not the way that your body would look like if you've been clipped from behind whilst running. And you only need to look 25 minutes previously when Finn Robertson ran in behind and the Rangers centre-half got sent off to know that is the way that your body would look when you run in front of somebody at speed and the boy's running behind you and clips your heels. And that's all it was. It was the faintest of touches that's clipped his heels and made him fall to the floor. If you look at that compared to the one with the boy Gassama, or whatever his name is, he's all over Dreyrek's shirt, he's holding his shirt, he's holding his shorts, and then all of a sudden his legs go into the air, he's flicked his legs into the air and fallen to the ground. It's no penalty. and I'm going to put myself forward and say it's just not a penalty. And I've always been a massive, not fan of VAR, but I've always said before it got brought in and since it's brought in that I wanted it before it was brought in, and I wouldn't get rid of it now. And I know that I'm in the minority, right? But we need to get away from this clear and obvious stuff. We need to get away from that and just make the correct decision. So that's happened. The VAR are looking at it. The VAR, I guarantee you're looking at that and thinking, probably not, but because there's a tiny slight bit of contact, it's not clear and obvious. So we're not going to tell them to come and have a look at it. In my opinion, they should change it, and if they're in that frame of mind where it's borderline, well, they think it's borderline. I think, in my opinion, it's never a penalty. It's not borderline at all. But if they're in that mindset, they send the ref to the screen. I know that they do that for other things, but it's usually when they've looked at it and thought, no, he's wrong, because it's clear and obvious. That's what I'm saying. If they're in that situation where they're like, ooh, they should send the ref to have another look at it. Because I guarantee you, if Don Robertson had another look at that, he wouldn't have given it. Mind you, it is at Ibrox, so it would have taken a set of balls not to give it, but I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have. I just think that in my opinion, it's all to do with the way that he falls over. That is not a natural way for somebody to fall to the floor when they're clipped in the back whilst running in front of somebody. Because, in all honesty, if he was clipped running at speed while somebody was behind him, he would have fallen to the ground, and Drayright would have fallen over him and fallen to the ground as well. And Drayright didn't fall. Drayright ran round him. So it's just not a penalty, in my opinion.
With regards to VAR, I think they do need to change the rules with that. But I would do it like in tennis, where you can make, well, it used to be in tennis. I think it's changed now, but if you don't like the decision, you challenge it, and then the referee or VAR, that's when they get involved. And I think that way you're not calling, like, it's not checking everything, so it's letting the game flow.
So would you have it like, sorry to interrupt you, but would you have it like NFL? I don't know how up to date you are with NFL, but NFL have, so like the coach will have a flag, and if he wants to challenge him, he throws the flag.
Essentially, yeah.
So you'd have like a coach's challenge, essentially.
Yeah, and then at that point, the referee would go over to the VAR, and the VAR team would look at the game and go, or look at the incident and go, okay, is this a penalty? Is this not? And then at that point, they'd be like, okay, it is a penalty, give it. If it's not, no. Play on, like, let play start from where the ball stopped, essentially. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. Because you're then not going to have situations where teams maybe aren't complaining about it. They'll be like, okay, that's a fair goal. And then VAR gets involved and like, scraps it, where the team that's just scored against wasn't complaining. And I think that would be, I don't really know how to put it. I think it's having only so many challenges makes like it more important. Can I get what I'm saying?
The thing that I think most about VAR in Scotland, right? Because, and I'm sure that somebody listening will think of an example, and I probably could think of an example if I really thought hard, right? But see, when you watch VAR, especially in like the World Cup, the Euros, the Champions League later phase, when it's the top refs in Europe or the top refs in the world, when you're watching them and you see VAR in action, it's very different. Because the refs that they've got, obviously the considered the best, and it's just so much more. It's just so much more smooth. It works far better. The last Euros, the World Cup, the other World Cups that VAR's been used in, and the Euros as well, VAR's been perfect in my opinion. As I say, there is probably someone sitting here listening who'll be like, "Oh, I remember that when Denmark played against Austria and this happened in the 50th minute. VAR was a shambles." There probably was a time, but I can't think of anything, and last season you could probably pick 10 things in the space of 15 minutes that happened in Scottish football. But the problem that we've got, in my opinion, in Scottish football is purely because of finance. We've got like like really, really basic VAR, like the most basic version of it you can have. In my opinion, you either have the whole shebang or you have nothing. Last season we played St Johnstone, and there was a goal that they scored at Dens that won them the match in the towards the end, probably maybe even in injury time, to win 2-1. Nicky Clark scored. And to be honest with you, I think most people on the ground thought it was offside. He was virtually standing on the goal line. But the problem was they couldn't give the goal. They couldn't disallow the goal even though they thought it was offside, because they couldn't get a camera angle to prove he was offside. So we're all standing in the stadium for, it must have been about 5 minutes. I'm sure it was Kevin Clancy. He's standing there holding his fingers to his ears for God knows how long, 5 minutes anyway. He then does the signal to say that he's going to have a look at it. So naturally everybody's thinking, oh well, he's going to disallow this now. He goes to the monitor, he stands at the monitor for a good couple of minutes, he comes away from the monitor, he brings both the managers together, and it isn't until the St Johnstone manager walked away fist bumping the away end that we realised, well, he's actually not going to disallow the goal. And the reason after the game was given was he spoke to the managers and he said, look, we think this is offside, but we can't actually prove it, so we're going to give the goal. VAR, I know that we've went totally off topic. VAR is either, in my opinion, you have the whole lot, you have the semi-automated offsides, the whole shebang, or you have nothing. Because it just makes a complete mockery out of it if you have like Pimland VAR.
Yeah, that's valid, I suppose.
But no, I do think that what you're saying about the challenges would be a good thing to do. I think on Gary Neville's podcast, I had Howard Webb or somebody on last season, and I'm sure he said that they were going to be trialling that in like an under-17s tournament or something like that in this summer just past. So maybe that's something that UEFA and FIFA might end up bringing in, you never know. But back to the Dundee game, great structure to them. Obviously last season and the season before with Tony Docherty, the 2 seasons combined they conceded well over 100 goals, and it's just not good enough. Obviously they were entertaining to watch at times where they're scoring loads of goals as well, but like I said last week, I'd rather the 1-2-0 and we're solid than every time you score 3 you're worried the other team's going to score 4. And they looked really, really comfortable. It's probably the best way to describe it, and probably be Rangers fans who'll say it's because they were shite. But I mean, I don't think John McCracken really had a save to make until into the second half. The three centre halves in the back 5 were outstanding. Astley, who scored, Clark Robertson, that's his best game in a Dundee jersey, and young Luke Graham, who was outstanding. The 3 in midfield, Digby, Callum Jones, who was very good, and Finn Robertson were good. And then obviously you have your wing backs. Drayright came in for Ethan Ingram. I thought Drayright was good. Amari Samuels, I'm not convinced on him, but look, we've got a point at Ibrox. You can't take that away from him. He's obviously been part of that. He's played away alright. And the 2 strikers, the new boy Wesley, I thought he looks like there's something about him, Jack. Done very well for the phase of play that led to Rangers getting their man sent off. Obviously he's not going to have a lot of the ball to really show what he's about because we're away at Ibrox, but he did look good. He did look good in flashes. And then Ashe, I thought, led the line very well. He certainly did a lot better than he did last week playing up with Aqua, so it might just be a case of the 2 of them seemed last week that they were getting in each other's way essentially, but he was very good on Saturday. Obviously it's a hard one to take when you're losing a goal very, very late on, and then we thought that we'd actually lost it altogether at the end. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen the highlights, but how the linesman didn't see that was offside initially is beyond me.
Probably has.
But he didn't give it.
Yeah,
he didn't give offside.
I think that's the problem with VAR, is that they're going to let it continue and they're going to wait and see for VAR to get involved. So I think he's probably said to the ref, I think that's offside, but I'm going to let play continue just in case it's not.
No, but what I'm saying to you, Jack, is that see when the goal went in, I initially looked straight at the linesman. We're obviously at the far side of the stadium and it's far away, but it looked borderline from where we were, and I immediately looked at the linesman, and the linesman ran back to the halfway line.
Alright.
So it wasn't even like he stood there and give it and or maybe said something like this is close. he ran back and initiating, this is a goal. And I was thinking to myself, whilst there was pandemonium going on all around us, yeah, that's going to be close, that. And then I was at the side of the away end that was, so we were really close to like the segregation line, at the side of I think it's the Sandy Jardine stand. Obviously we're looking beyond the Rangers fans sitting in there towards the goal, and they're all standing at the segregation line giving it big licks, and it's just the worst feeling in the world, is it? And then all of a sudden it come up on the big screen and the stadium announcer announces that there's a VAR check, and it was like somebody had put a pin in a balloon. The whole place just went, like, just died. And everybody's obviously dead nervous, and it was given very quickly because it was miles offside. How, as I say, how the line didn't see it is beyond me. And when that goal was disallowed, I've never laughed at a football match like that for quite some time. Are the same boys who were standing at the Seggy line giving it plenty didn't want to know after that. They were like, get me out of here as quickly as possible type attitude. But that was pretty funny. But no, it would have been a travesty if we didn't take anything from that game. They played very, very well. I don't want to go as far as saying like it's the turning point or anything like that for Stephen Presley, but I don't want to get like massively get really confident or go completely the opposite way as I did last week or anything like that. But I just think that there's definitely something there. I don't think we're going to be nearly as bad as what people think this season. That's all. That's what I'm going to say just now.
I think obviously coming up against Rangers, your players are going to be more motivated than they would be than against Falkirk or Livy. So you probably are going to put in naturally a better performance. You're going to try harder against the bigger clubs. So I think the real test is when you're coming up against your Livys, your Falkirks, Kelly, and then I think that's the real measure of how good your team will be, because anyone could not anyone could put in a good performance, but you're naturally just going to be more motivated against the bigger clubs, and I think that's maybe why you struggled against Hibs. Sorry, the players probably didn't view that as a massive game, so they maybe didn't try as hard. So I think, like I say, coming up against the smaller clubs is where you're going to see the real Dundee, essentially.
No, I get exactly what you're saying. Obviously, you hear this all the time that players raise their game when they're playing against Celtic and Rangers. So I totally get that, and that's why I'm not wanting to be cautiously optimistic is probably the right phrase for it. I just think that since Presley's came in, obviously the first two games were a shambles. They didn't play too badly against Airdrie. They lost the game at home to a championship team. Go away, they didn't play well at Alloa, from what I've heard, and obviously lose that game. Go out the cup. They struggled through the games against Bonnyrigg and Montrose, winning the games, and then obviously the Hibs game last week. I said it was uninspiring at the time because it was. They didn't get a doing or anything like that. They lost the game 2-1, but they didn't look like they were really ever going to score. But I just think that there's just something there, Jack. I don't know what it is, and I might be misinterpreting it, and come the end of the season we might get relegated. We could well do that, but I just feel like I just don't think we're going to be as bad as what everybody thinks. But when I say everybody, I'm not just including fans of other teams. I'm including fans of Dundee, who are just no having Presley. Like, I've always been open-minded about it, and I'm thinking, no, he's not who I would have chosen to become the Dundee manager, but I'm a Dundee supporter, so what's the use of me just going in and going, want him to get beat, want him to fail, want him sacked? I'm supporting him and hoping that he does well. And I just think like some of the signings he's made, I really like the boy Jones in midfield. He's clearly got them more organised. They look far more organised, far more structure to the defence in the midfield. They didn't get played through as nearly as easily as they did the past couple of seasons. And I know it's only 2 games, and that could well just be not a one-off, obviously, but it could well be a case of that's just the couple of games and then it'll go back to the way it was. But they just look like they've got more of a structure to them. They look far more organised. I just feel like there's people should be a wee bit more optimistic, cautiously though. Is really what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, when your expectations are so low for a manager to do well, I think any sign of light in the tunnel is going to be like reassuring. I think if you're expecting to get beat 5-0 every week and you get beat 1-0, I mean that's still going to seem like an improvement on where you thought you would be. So I think what you're saying, I think, like, maybe you never, but I think Dundee fans in general had a really low expectation, and so when you're seeing his team putting in a good performance against Rangers, a solid performance against Rangers, it's probably raised your expectation, like it's raised your accepting almost of the situation, because it's not as bad as first feared.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. The reason why I think that it could come good is because of his signings. There's some players that didn't look like they're up to it. The boy Aqua, and you know what, right? I say that, right, and it's so harsh because it's August. Boy Aqua signed a 3-year deal. He could be here for 3 seasons, and it's 2 months into or 6 weeks into his time here. The boy Aqua's not impressed a lot. But as I say, he's been here for 6 weeks. They've got, like, the boy Jones I really, really like. I think Digby does a good job in the midfield breaking things up. The young Tony Yagan, who hasn't really featured as much since the league started, but he's talented, he's wanting to run at players, he's got a trick in him. As I say, they look more structured, they look more organised. Dre Wright, I really like him. I think he's a good solid signing. A seasoned pro and had quite a few seasons under his belt in the Scottish Premiership, so that's a good signing in my opinion. The new strikers, and then obviously we'll go on to who they signed last week. If they get another 4 or 5 players in of the same calibre as what they've signed so far, I think they'll be alright, I honestly do. I'm not saying that they're going to be challenging for the top half of the league or pushing on for Europe or getting to cup finals or anything like that, but I think this season, if Dundee finished 10th or 8th, 9th, 10th, move on to next season and grow further, because regardless of who was the manager, in my opinion, you could have had Sir Alex Ferguson, Jose Mourinho, Jurgen Klopp, Zinedine Zidane as Dundee's manager this season. This was always going to be a tricky season for Dundee. They'd lost pretty much their whole team. They had like 11 boys signed, and most of them were in the first picks from last season. It was always going to be a tricky season. So, as I said last week, I felt sorry for Stephen Presley. He was taking a lot of the shite for the shit show that he'd inherited, and a lot of that came from above, in my opinion. But this was always going to be a tricky season for Dundee, and I just think that he said that he saw green shoots. I think there is signs that it could get better, and they're not playing this weekend. They're obviously got a free week because they're out the League Cup, but their next game's away to Kilmarnock. I think Dundee, Falkirk, Livy, Kilmarnock, Motherwell are all in like their own wee league. Now, that could be totally wrong, but I think that if they take more points than they lose from games like that, then they'll do alright. And alright for Dundee this season is 9th, in my opinion. Just consolidate the season, didn't get relegated, because too many times when Dundee have gone through a bit of a transition, they get relegated, and it puts them back 5 years. If they get through this season and kick on, because one of the things Stephen Presley said that he wanted to do was he wanted to put Dundee into a position where they weren't going to be in this situation every summer where they're having to sign 10, 11, 12 players every single year. They're wanting to get boys on longer term contracts, but also stagger them out. So they've got boys on 2-year deals, boys on 3-year deals, boys on 1-year deal, like loans and all that sort of thing. Stagger them all out, and that's so much better and forward thinking. So as I say, consolidate this season and take it from there. Hopefully that's what happens. But I've havered on too much about the weekend now and about the future. So what we'll do now is we'll cover the rest of the results from the weekend. I don't know how much of the highlights you've seen from across the board.
I've seen the Kelly goal against Hibs, and that was it.
Oh, that was an absolute cracker, was it?
Yeah, great goal.
So Saturday's games, the 2 early games, the 3 o'clock kickoffs, Livingston 3, Falkirk 1. Now, I don't know if it's a I told you so moment from me, or it's just the case that Livy are Falkirk's bogey team, because obviously they didn't beat them all last season either. Falkirk, after their opening day draw against you boys, go away to there, and from what I've seen, had the majority of the first half, and then Livy got the park and scored twice, and that was it from then on. Falkirk got themselves back into it, and then a late Livy goal. So 3 points for David Martindale. The other 3 o'clock kickoff was St Mirren 0, Motherwell 0. Now, obviously, on Saturday, if you've seen Sports Scene, they've done the 50th anniversary kind of special. That was Archie McPherson who was commentating on that game, and in a humorous way, he slaughtered that match. It didn't look great on the highlights. I couldn't imagine having to watch 90 minutes of it. And then obviously the later game was Rangers 1, Dundee 1. Moving on to Sunday, we had the Sky game, which was Aberdeen 0, Celtic 2. The boy Negrin looks like a good signing for Celtic, and Hatate, who's been outstanding for a few years now, scored a cracker. United 2, Hearts 3, and Hibs 2, Kilmarnock 2. Kilmarnock coming from 2-0 down, and as we spoke about briefly just there, the boy Brannan scored an absolute cracker of a volley to equalise, I think it was, to equalise for Killie. So that is the weekend round up. Moving on to a big game for United this midweek, due to in the first leg with Rapid Vienna over in Austria. We obviously both watched it on the telly. United played very, very well, I thought. They never looked like they were ever going to have another AZ Alkmaar situation. In fairness, I don't think Rapid Vienna are nearly as good as AZ Alkmaar. But they're certainly a team with far more resources than United, and if football was on paper, should be beating United, but it's not. Have you got a ticket for the second leg?
I do. I'm in the shed. I'm going with my missus and her dad. Are you going, are you?
No, I'm saying you do. I'm not going.
Yeah, I do. So that'll be fun. I think it'll be a good atmosphere. I think on the game on Thursday, the draw, I think it was one of the games where it could either have been 4-1 Rapid Vienna or 2-2 after they scored their second goal. I think we did play well. I think it was unfortunate to lose Papo so early in the game, but I think Zach Satsford had a
as well, didn't it?
Yeah, it looked bad. He had to get stretchered off. But I think Zach Satsford had a great game. He got the assist and a goal, so he's looking really promising. But he never stops running. So I think he's been a good addition to the squad so far, and I think he could be a threat against them this week. With Waters, I think he's ill. He missed the Hearts game, so I don't know if he'll be available for the return leg. So we'll have to see. I seen Owen Sturton started on yesterday against Hearts, which was good to see, and he might be in contention for getting a start against them on Thursday. So I think it's going to be a tough game, obviously, with the disparity in finances. But I think if we sit back, soak up the pressure, hit them on the counter, I don't see why we can't at least threaten them a few times. As long as we could, like I say, as long as we can keep it tight at the back, I think we've always got a chance of maybe snagging a result.
Mm-hmm. I think it becomes tricky now because you go into the first game and there's no expectation. I mean, one of my pals who was across there, and he would have had Rapid Vienna like they were. He would have had United playing against Real Madrid, honestly, the way that he was going on about Rapid Vienna. And I was like, you've never even seen Rapid Vienna. How on earth do you know how good they are? But the way that he was going on about them, it was like they were playing against Real Madrid. I'm not joking you. It was like the Galacticos. But obviously, you go into that, and United is like the coaches, the analysts, the players. They all know about Rapid Vienna. They'll have done their homework. But I can't imagine very many United fans will have went over there knowing what they were coming up against, and I think there was no expectation really. But the problem now is that you're bringing them back home and there is expectation because you've seen how well you did over there. I'm not saying that there's expectation that you're going to win and everybody's expecting it, but all I'm saying is that a lot of people now will think, well, we've done the hard bit. So a lot of it, you often see that the underdog goes to the first game and they get a good result, and then the second game they think, right, we're in this, and they get it done.
Well,
So hopefully that's not the case.
Exactly like AZ Alkmaar the other season.
Exactly.
Go in the first game, get the win, think, oh, we've actually got a chance here, and then we go there and we get absolutely annihilated.
Mm-hmm. So I think the problem in that one was a bit of Dutch arrogance. They came over here thinking, come up, pre-season friendly almost, like let's just have a bit of a kickabout, take a couple of goals and go back home. And they got a bit of a shock and got beat 1-0, because United were obviously right up for it, because it was a big game for them. And then obviously they go back home, they've had a bit of a balk, and their fans are not chuffed, and they've done what they've done. Obviously didn't help that United had that goalie, but I don't think it's the same. I just don't think that Rapid Vienna aren't very great. I think that they're probably man for man better than United. But when I say they're no great, I just mean that I don't think they're as good as what a lot of people thought they'd be. I don't think they're nearly as good as AZ, as I've said a few times now. But I think that if I was to put my neck on the line, I think that United will narrowly lose. But they've put themselves in a great position, and I know that earlier I said that there might be a bit of expectation coming because they've put themselves in they have put themselves in a great position.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if away goals were still a thing, would be laughing, but obviously it's not. And I also think we will lose. I think it will be a close loss as well. I think maybe 2-1 or 1-1, and then they'll score a couple maybe at the end. I don't know. Maybe they'll score and our heads will drop at the end, so they maybe grab another. But I think they aren't AZ Alkmaar. I think they have just signed a boy for $2.5 million, so they've clearly got better resources than us, and they are going to be a threat. And like I say, I think we've just got to be up for it, match them, like dominate them physically, and we might be in with a chance. But I don't see it happening. But we'll just have to wait and see.
Mm. Yeah, as I say, I think if I was a betting man, which I do very, very rarely bet, I would probably say that I think it'll probably be a narrow Rapid Vienna victory, if it's a narrow win on the night or a narrow win on aggregate. But I'm not a betting man, and every time I put a bet on, I lose my accumulator, so don't listen to me. But I think it's going to. I'm pretty sure that I heard that they went to the champions of Austria at the weekend and won. I think the champions are Sturm Graz at the moment, and apparently they went there at the weekend and won. So they're no mugs, and maybe we didn't see the best of them last week. They certainly didn't play very well, in my opinion. I don't know what you thought.
I think it's probably the case with AZ Alkmaar as well, and what you were saying is that they probably thought they were going to stroll it. Probably thought that, it's our first time in Europe in a few seasons. They got beat by AZ Alkmaar 7-0. Like, they're not going to be that good. I think we can just turn up and get the result. And they probably weren't up for it 100%. So I think they'll probably bring their A game. Like you say, if they've just beat Sturm Graz, then they're obviously a good team. And it is going to be a challenge. It's going to be difficult. And especially if they bring their A game, then we're just going to have to hope and pray, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, they're no mugs. As I say, I didn't think they played very well last week, but they're certainly no mugs. And if they're going away to the champions of their country and they're winning away from home, then they're certainly more than capable of coming to Tannadice and winning. Anyway, fingers crossed for United of the week. I say that through gritted teeth, but fingers crossed to United for that. And did we speak about last week who they could face? Was it AIK Stockholm or
FC Gjør?
How did that first leg go? Do you know?
I think AIK won 2-1. So
in Sweden.
In Sweden. So we're more likely to face them, but we'll see.
Well, they're obviously more of a name than Gjør, but that means nothing really, does it?
No.
So at the moment it's looking like the winner will head to Sweden, but we'll never know. But we'll move on. I don't think there's going to be much for you to talk about in the next section, but the next section is any transfer news. I think last time we spoke it was the Tuesday, and Dundee had signed Joe Wesley at that point. I think I'm saying his name right. But Dundee had signed him at that point, so they've got him in. Started at Ibrox on Saturday evening. Done well. Looking forward to seeing more of him. But since that was announced, late on Friday they announced Jan Danda. Now, on paper that's a great signing, a very fitting signing to what we require, which is a bit of creativity in midfield. Now, if you were to ask a Hearts fan what they think of this signing, I'm sure Hearts fans would say not very complimentary things, because I didn't think he done very well at Hearts, certainly didn't set the world alight. But if we get the Ross County version of Jan Danda, we're on to a winner, because he was outstanding for Ross County, in which obviously got himself a move to Hearts. A loan deal for the season. What do you make of that? Do you think that'll be a good signing?
Yeah, I do. I think he's obviously got a bit of pedigree now in Scotland. Obviously at Ross County, I think he's creative. I think he can probably unlock defences. I don't think he's going to be he's not going to be up for a fight, I don't think. I think he's more focused on the technical, and I think you probably do need another boy in the middle of the park that can break up play a bit better and will be a bit more physical. But I do think it is a really good signing, and I think United were after him as well, so the fact that you've signed him ahead of us, obviously I don't know if that's gospel, but I do think he can contribute well to the Dundee team, especially with Simon Murray. Is Simon Murray out for the season? No, I think Simon Murray is in line to be fit for the next game. Oh, okay, so I think he'll play well with Simon Murray. Simon Murray's always a threat, and with a creative boy behind him, I think could potentially run riot this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, obviously played together at Ross County, and I think, well, from what Dundee have said, Simon Murray was instrumental in getting him here. I think he was almost harassing Jan Danda. But it was funny you should say that, because about United being in for him, because I completely forgot that we spoke about that last week, that Dundee and United were both linked with him, and Scott Burns had poured cold water over it from a United point of view. But I've seen you see all sorts of shite on Twitter though, do you? I mean, Dundee fans saying United couldn't afford them and blah blah blah, and whether that's true or not, who knows? Only Dundee and Hearts and Jan Danda and his agent will know that. But no, Dundee have got him in the door. Hopefully they'll have more signings coming in. But touching on that, they actually do have a couple of boys in from Monterrey. Now, back when Martin was on the pod and it was early in pre-season and we're speaking about pre-season friendlies and trialists coming in, etc., they had 3 boys in from Monterrey on trial. And I was very, very against it. I thought, go Scottish preferably, seasoned pros in Scotland, or go down south or across to Ireland, get boys in who know our style of football or roughly what it's like. But the more that they've signed a lot of boys that fit that profile that I wanted, I think a sprinkling of boys on loan from Monterrey would maybe add to what we've got. We've obviously got Garza and Lopez. They came in January, and their loans are up in January. And I think they kind of got Dundee and Monterrey got their fingers burnt a bit by Garza came across first, and then Lopez came in a few weeks afterwards and has never played really. He's clearly not good enough, and I don't know why they've not cut his loan short and just taken him back. Must be so he could have a experience of Europe for a year, I don't know. But since then they've decided that they're going to just send boys across for trials and see what we like, and if we like boys we could have them type thing. So in the summer they had 3 boys, and one of them was Jose Uriah, so they've actually got him back. So him and, this is going to be a butcher, Francisco Aladahir Valenzuela have came across for 10 days. Now, if Jose Urias was across in July or June, July time, and he's coming back, they've clearly seen something in him. I think he scored at Brecon in pre-season, so they clearly see something in him that they want to get him back for another look. And he's a bit of an attacking midfielder, I think he's a bit of a similar mould to Danda. So if he is to come in on loan for 6 months or a year, whatever it is, it could be promising. The article that I would assume that George Cran wrote for the Courier says that the boy Valenzuela is a striker who has, according to the Mexican media, courted European interest in the past. He scored in a pre-season friendly against Real Betis last year in August. I don't know if that means that he's the next superstar. He's featured 3 times for Monterrey's first team. He played 45 minutes in a CONCACAF Champions League victory over Canadian team Forge FC. So they're across for 10 days. I would assume that Urias will sign, because I doubt that they're bringing him back over again from Mexico to no sign him. That, more than anything, be a bit cruel on the boy, having to come across twice and not get signed.
Yeah, that would be cruel.
Is there anything in the mix for United? And I know that it's kind of all going to be a bit quiet for United. They've obviously signed quite a few players. Is there anything at all been rumoured or anything?
Yeah, so I actually found the rumour today. So we've been linked with a centre midfielder from Norway called Julius Eskilsson, and he plays for Haugesund in the Norwegian Prem. And there's rumours that he's signing for us. I think he's more of a creative centre midfielder. He could play further forward as well, which is obviously useful. Versatility is always nice to have. He's 26. I'm not sure if it's going to be a loan or a permanent deal, but I've seen he's dropped out of his team's squad the last 5 or 6 games after them losing every game this season. So, I mean, that's not the greatest sign, but it's a body coming in. It helps with our injury woes, and yeah, like I say, it's another option for us. He can play on the wing, he can play up front, he can play attacking midfield as well. So a bit of depth's always handy to have.
Yeah. It's always exciting when you hear transfer rumours as well, isn't it? I mean, especially when they're boys that you don't really know about, isn't it?
Yeah, I've seen a wee YouTube clip of him, and I think he likes to spray passes out wide. So I don't know how different he is to the other centre mids we've got. I think the other centre mids are currently like ball winners. They're not really the creative type. So it's good to have that option if we want it, and he can obviously come on and change the game if he needs to be.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, until we've got more transfer news, we'll move on. A subject that when we were putting together our running order for this week, we weren't really going to speak about, but last week after we'd recorded, it came out about Dundee's ongoing saga with their new stadium. Honest to God, this stadium is, you could put this into EastEnders, could you? And it would just be an ongoing storyline from like EastEnders or Coronation Street. It's just an absolute shambles. But the Courier were reporting last week planning permission wasn't going to be on the council's agenda for their August meeting. Now, obviously, the committee that meet from Dundee City Council to consider planning applications are so busy that they can only meet once a month. But it wasn't on the agenda, and Dundee are hoping that it'll be in September's agenda. Now, since that was released by the Courier, that article, and reported on, Steve Finnan, I think it is, who writes columns for the Courier, who is actually a United supporter, put out an article about basically saying that the residents of Dundee should be banging on the doors of the council, their own local councillors, and demanding that they do something about this, because it's turning into a bit of a joke, and they've obviously got the power to do something about it. In all honesty, Jack, I know that you've got no invested interest in this whatsoever. I don't know if you're one of these people who wants Dundee not to get this through spite or whatever, but I think we need to look at this in a bigger picture. That if you take away from the fact that it's a football stadium for Dundee, it's just totally epitomises the shambles of a country we live in. Nothing ever gets done, does it?
No, nothing ever gets done. There's too much bureaucracy, too much red tape, And so I think this could be a running saga for a long time, to be honest with you. It obviously has run for a while already. It's run for a number of years now, and I think it'll run for a number of years more, to be honest.
I think that the latest sticking point, because the planning permission has been in since like February or March last year, and it's obviously never been considered. One of the reasons, I think, was because there was something to do with the slip road into the stadium off the Kingsway. Transport Scotland or whatever weren't happy about it, and I don't think they would have went for it, so the council weren't willing to consider the application until that was ironed out. So my main gripe about that was that Dundee then went back to some experts, consultancy firm that deal with like planning permission for trunk roads or whatever it is that they do, and they're experts, and they say if you were to propose that, we think that there's no reason for that to get rejected. And Dundee are obviously going to have to pay money for that. Now, why can't Dundee and Transport Scotland get together and Transport Scotland say, we will not accept anything unless this is how it looks? And then that's up to Dundee to maybe negotiate with them or go, right, okay, that's fair enough, we will incorporate that into our proposal. It just seems like there's just so many obstacles put up for something that, I know that United fans might disagree with this, but it will bring in positive things for the city. There's obviously going to be houses built, there's going to be hotels, it will bring in jobs for the local area. It's not just for the sake of having a football stadium there. I just don't know. It's very, very frustrating. I am one of the people who does think it will happen. I don't think the Americans, of having put this money into it already and having gone through the stuff that they've gone through, will let it not happen anymore. I think they will eventually get it through. But it just shows you just how much of a farce things getting done in this country is. Yeah,
I mean, the lawyers and the consultants have got to make their money somehow, and so
very true.
They're going to not allow probably direct communication between Transport Scotland and Dundee. So I think, what you're saying with talking to Dundee, Transport Scotland directly, that's probably the best way you could go about it. Just say, what do we need to do? What's the best way that we can set this up so we can move forward and get the building started, essentially. With regards to, do I want it to be built? I mean, I'm not really that invested in it. I think we'd lose a bit of the specialty of the derby as is, with the stadiums being so close. But if Dundee want to progress as a football club, I think that's what they need to do, because the facilities are quite old, and with this new facilities that they could be building, it could be an attractive proposition for players if they see these new facilities, the new stadium. For Dundee, it makes solid sense, but overall, I'm not particularly invested as such.
No, if I were you, I wouldn't be either. Like, I didn't get why you would be bothered. Like why would you care? Type thing. If you were a United supporter, so no, I totally get your standpoint on it. As you said, obviously we're going to lose the romance, is probably the right way to say it, but we're going to lose the closest stadiums in Britain and blah 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 type thing, and it's obviously iconic, and it's something that we can claim our city has, and you get plenty of people coming up to Dundee who are like grim toppers and people who are just interested in football because they're so fascinated by it and they see it. So yeah, it will be a shame to lose that, but Dundee need a new stadium, and there's no enough. So United obviously moved into Tannadice. Tannadice was there before United, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So United were formed, and Tannadice was already a stadium, and one of the teams we had donkeys years ago played there before United did. But United probably got, I wouldn't say lucky is the answer, because they had the foresight to secure the land and whatnot, but the end of the street that United play in, you've got, they've bought Gussie, they've got the buildings and that are beside Gussie that they're transforming into bars and everything now, I think, they have expanded their footprint on that side of the street, whereas Dundee didn't have that luxury. They obviously didn't have the foresight. They could have had Gussie themselves if they looked into it before United did. But they are in a situation now where they can't really do anything with dens. It would probably cost just as not as much money. But if they were to knock down the main stand in the south enclosure and build modern stands on dens, they're still not going to get anything like what they get in that new stadium. Now, that new stadium, I think people's main complaints is the location of it, and yeah, it's not great. But when Dundee moved into dens in 1899 or whenever it was, that was in a really bad location. That was on the outskirts of Dundee at the time. So see in like maybe 50, 60 years, if Dundee are in that stadium at the edge of Camperdown, who's to say that it won't have been like what happened with dens and it's all loads of stuff's popped up? Because there will be plenty of people thinking to themselves, where can I stick a pub near that stadium?
Yeah.
And make some money. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I mean, I know that this is very, very unpopular, but I honestly think that the two of them should just build a stadium and play in it together. It makes so much financial sense. Now I know that United have got a far more modern stadium. They've got the two newer stands, the one with the Sandeman Street stand and then the East stand are the two newer stands out the four. But that main stand at Tannadice is getting on a bit. And I was in it at the beginning of last season and it's ducking under pillars and all sorts. So eventually Tannadice will end up in the same nick as dens. I just think it would make far more sense for the two of them to put themselves in one stadium, however many, 15,000 or whatever, and just split the bill and make money off what's going on, like during the week that Dundee are putting round their new stadium. It makes so much, and then they would have more money for signing players. If AC Milan and Inter Milan can do it, then we can do it. But that's never going to happen, so there's no point in speaking about it.
I actually wholeheartedly agree with you. I think it just makes so much sense, mate. I think the only sticking point you would have is people would... I feel like the clubs would maybe lose their identities a wee bit at that point, because obviously you've got your own stadium, that's your home, but now you're sharing it with another club. I think that's probably the only sticking point I could see. But financially, it makes complete sense.
There's loads. There's obviously pros and cons to it. Like there's pros and cons to anything. But I just think that the pros outweigh the cons, in my opinion, on this particular argument. You hear all the time people who aren't from Dundee, especially, they'll say, "You two should just merge." Like, it make more sense. I would never want that. But I think the stadium is an idea that I wouldn't be against it. If the two of them come out and said, we're going to have a stadium. I mean, they missed their chance, in my opinion, 20 odd years ago when they were going to have a joint stadium in Caird Park. It was going to be 30,000 seater for the Euros that Scotland and Ireland were going to joint host. And then after the Euros, they were going to downsize the capacity to whatever, 20,000 or whatever it was going to be. And it was going to be a shared stadium in Caird Park. That would have been perfect for them. But they missed that chance. And if you believe the rumours, I think the Americans that own Dundee have been whoring themselves out to Ogren and his board to try and get them to join in. But I think that Ogren's been listening to the United supporters a bit, and the United supporters are, well, in the main, against it. And that's probably been why he's decided not to go for it. But in my opinion, the pros outweigh the cons. But I do understand where people would be coming from if they disagreed with me, in my opinion. But anyway, we'll close off this week's episode with week 2 or match day 2 of the Futbology Challenge. Now, Martin and Jack both drew the same game this week. I also drew that game. Jack had 2 games, Martin had 1 game, and I had 5. So Jack's from me and Jack had to go through a random number generator. Jack ended up drawing the same game as Martin, so that was Martin's only game. And I've drew a different one. So the game that Martin and Jack drew was, ironically, a Dundee derby. It was from August the 11th, 2015. At Tannadice, Dundee United 2, Dundee 2. My game was from the 11th of August, 2018. And it was Dundee 0, Aberdeen 1. Now, we'll go through I'll put the league table and this week's results on screen now if you're watching or listening on YouTube. The United team from that game was, now Jack, let's see how much of this game you remember, considering you remember bugger all of last week's. The managers of the teams were Jackie McNamara and Paul Hartley. United's team on the day: Lewis Zwick, Paul Dixon, Col Donaldson, Mark Durnan, Ryan McGowan, John Suter, Aidan Connolly, Scott Fraser, John Rankin, Blair Spittle and Darko Badul. On the bench, Mark McCallum, Sean Dillon, Scott Lockhead, Chris Erskine, Charlie Telfer, Robbie Muirhead and Simon Murray. The teams for Dundee: Scott Bain, Paul McGinn, James McPake, Julian Extebeguren, Kevin Holt, Gary Harkins, Kevin Thompson, Nick Ross, Greg Stewart, Rory Loy and Kane Hemmings. And on Dundee's bench was David Mitchell, Gary Irvin, Thomas Conrad, Darryl Meggett, Nicky Lowe, Simon Ferry and Paul McGowan. The scorers on the day were Blair Spittle in the 64th minute, and he made it a double for himself in the 67th. Greg Stewart pulled the goal back on the 81st minute, and it was a 90th minute equaliser from James McPake. Now, I remember this game particularly well because I was behind that goal that James McPake equalised into, and the scene of carnage will live long in the memory for me. What do you remember about that one, Jack, if anything?
I remember not a lot.
Well, I'll tell you something. You were definitely at it. I know that you obviously, you know yourself, you were at it, but you definitely were at it because we went for a pint afterwards.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So I think I remember James McPake scoring, and you was all celebrating like you'd won the league. Apart from that, I don't really remember any of it. Like I say, my memory's a sieve, so that's literally all I remember. I remember going to the pub afterwards with you. That's all I remember.
I'm sure we went to the Barrows after that game.
We did.
But that was a 2-2 draw in 2015. It was a Tuesday night. And moving on to my result, that was from 2018, a Saturday game. The teams that day were for Dundee. The managers were Neil McCann and Derek McInnes. So Dundee's team lines, this is going to send shivers down my spine, this team, by the way. Jack Hamilton, Jinseric Kusunga, Josh Meekings, Nathan Ralph, Jesse Kern, Carol Madianga, Paul McGowan, Elton Ingwatala, Lewis Spence, John Alassane Mende and Sofian Musa. On the bench for Dundee were Elliot Parish, Stephen Colker, Cammy Kerr, Callum Moore, Adil Nabi, Matthew Henvey and Craig Whiten. For Aberdeen, they went with Joe Lewis, Graham Shinney, Andy Considine, Michael Devlin, Dominic Ball, Stephen Gleeson, Gary McAstephen, Lewis Ferguson, Niall McGinn, Sam Cosgrove and Stevie May. And their bench was Thomas Cherney, Chris Forrester, Scott Wright, Bruce Anderson, Ryan Harrington, Frank Ross and Dean Campbell. Now, Aberdeen won the game 1-0 with a 75th minute penalty from Gary McAstephen, which is great. Now, I really hope when we do this Futbology challenge through the year that I get name your games for this season, because it really does make me want to start crying that season. I think we spoke about this season last week when I said that if you had concluded friendlies, cup games and league games, I seen Dundee win 3 matches all season. So if I get games from that season, I'll not be picking up many points in this challenge. And I've got to speak about it and reminisce. Now, this was early on in the season, and I didn't think Dundee played overly badly in this particular match. But that season just got progressively worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So, yeah, as things stand, Martin has a 3-point lead over Jack. He is on 4 points, Jack's on 1, and I am on 0. So hopefully next week I manage to pick up my first points of the season. Jack's absolutely delighted that he's got a 1-1 draw, because he says to me that he's not going to have very many games to pick from this season, and any point is a prisoner.
Exactly.
But anyway, that is the end of episode 7. So thanks very much for everyone listening. We'll be back next week. Dundee don't have a game on Saturday or Sunday, but because of the League Cup. But we've got plenty to talk about. United all have been in Europe. Hopefully they've got another European game to prepare for. And are they away to Kilmarnock in the League Cup this weekend?
I believe so.
Yeah, they're away to Kilmarnock. So hopefully with that and Dundee having some new signings, we'll have plenty to talk about. But thanks very much, Jack, for another episode.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next week. Perfect. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend. Bye for now.